You know, I didn't really grow up with the Evil Dead movies. In fact, my introduction to the series was Army of Darkness being aired on daytime TV, and the many ads I would come across for it in my comics from the early 90s. I didn't actually sit down to watch the original Evil Dead until 2010, but once I caught up with the rest of the franchise, I was more than ready to have some fun when Ash vs. Evil Dead premiered. Then, fast forward to 2023 with Evil Dead Rise, and wow, I was completely blown away. Ellie instantly became one of my favorite Deadites in the whole franchise, and the marketing around her was so effective that she's still the first thing I think of when someone brings up the movie. Now, years later, Evil Dead Burn picks up right where Rise left off. So, does Burn rise to the occasion, or does it fizzle out in a little bit of smoke before it even really gets going? Hey, what's good everybody? It's your boy, DatChickenWang, part of the Chicken Wang Gang crew, and today I want to give you my, for the most part, spoiler-free review for the latest entry into this 45-year-old horror movie franchise. Everybody, let's get into this review for Evil Dead Burn. After the sudden death of her husband, Alice meets with her late husband's family and joins them at their secluded family home to grieve. But what begins as a tense family reunion quickly turns into another brutal fight for survival when the household falls victim to an unknown evil. So you know right away, Evil Dead Burn actually kind of had me hooked. It does a great job of reestablishing where we are in the franchise, connecting itself directly to Evil Dead Rise, and from there it wastes no time building tension among its main characters. And I also dug how we went from having the dark, dreary atmosphere around the lake to moving to a fun, bright shot of a nightclub, and then we follow it up with a scene at a funeral that just completely caught me off guard for how goofy it was. And once we get to Alice's late husband's family's home, the tension is through the roof before anything supernatural even happens. I mean, nobody in this family feels like they're playing with a full deck of cards, especially the husband, because he is already on edge and the things he does later are just wow. And it's sad because Alice is constantly put on the spot about her relationship with her late husband, but all the tension going on here, it seems very real given the situation that happened. And it made me want to see how the relationship with the family was actually going to unfold before the evil even entered the picture. But when they finally do show up, oh man, we get that Evil Dead chaos that you have just been waiting for. So it definitely delivers there, but I have to give a trigger warning in case anyone's sensitive to violence regarding animals. The family dog sadly doesn't make it. Anyway, I mean, this movie has an incredible action sequence involving a car. There are some teases sprinkled in about this family's involvement in more Evil Dead lore, and the Deadites are just their usual selves. They take absolute glee in just tormenting and torturing people instead of just outright killing them. So hey, at this point, I'm pretty much hooked. I mean, the threats felt real and spooky, the character interactions kept me on edge, and the setup was just overall great. I mean, shoot, me as an audience member, I'm just sitting there with the characters realizing that ish just got real. Unfortunately, that's also where some of what they established in such a great setup starts to slip away gradually. So after all of that madness, the characters finally get a chance to breathe for a little bit. The problem is, once that happens, the movie starts asking those same characters to make decisions that just don't feel believable anymore. Like, I'll give the first one a pass since it involves a grandma with severe dementia, but once the people who actually understand that something spooky is actually going on, they start making questionable decisions too. And that's kind of where the movie started losing me. Like, my biggest issue with Burn isn't actually the gore or even the pacing. It's the screenplay. Instead of letting the horror naturally create the tension, the movie starts making our characters do stupid things that essentially create obstacles just to keep the plot moving. Joseph is probably the biggest example of this. The movie establishes that he's been studying his grandfather's work on the occult and even knows about the magical MacGuffin that everyone's searching for in this movie. There are multiple opportunities where he could, go walk and grab it for himself, or at the very least, tell Alice exactly where it is. But instead, nobody seems to have any sense of urgency. Surprisingly, including the Deadites. And that's what frustrated me. Joseph isn't written as an idiot. The movie tells us he knows probably more than anyone else about what's happening with the evil, which is exactly why his inaction in multiple parts of the movie just stood out so much. And that's a major pet peeve of mine in movies. Mine personally. But I can't stand it when people just lose all sense of urgency in a life or death situation. And by the time our characters actually find the magical MacGuffin, it's even more frustrating because they just suddenly develop butterfingers and they can't hold on to the thing for more than a few seconds. But hey, that's just me. Now maybe that makes things more interesting for other people, but me personally, I just found myself wishing they did not include a magical MacGuffin in the first place, and instead focused on survival or just getting out of the house entirely. And don't get me wrong, none of these moments on their own completely ruin the movie for me, but together they slowly start to chip away at the goodwill that this movie had built with its setup. It almost felt like the movie was so focused on extending the finale that it forgot to really rely on what made the early stuff work so well. The opening trusted its characters, and the last 2/3 of the movie just kept having them make stupid decisions for the sake of keeping the story moving forward. Now what really surprised me was the design of the final Deadite, the last boss. As you know, a lot of these Evil Dead movies have that final Deadite, and up until this point, I thought the mix of practical and CG, for the most part, looked really well in this movie. But once we get to the final Deadite, who should have the most haunting and coolest design, let's just say it completely took me out of the movie. Like, this was some Imhotep the Mummy type looking Deadite. So, yeah. Like, okay, I get it. Burn is the motif of this movie, but you know, sometimes it's okay to just say no. And add to that a final confrontation or final fight that drags on for way too long because the character keeps activating their Butterfinger skill and just leaving it with an okay ending. Like, I just couldn't help but feel disappointed by the time it was all over. Now, with all that being said, I don't want to make it sound like Evil Dead Burn completely falls apart because I honestly think the production team did some incredible work here. The cinematography is easily my favorite part of the movie. From the opening shots overlooking the familiar lake to the run-down family home, everything has this sickly, worn-down feeling that puts you on edge before the Deadites make their appearance. This movie also does a great job contrasting its locations. Whether it's a vibrant nightclub, a crematorium that feels deceptively safe, or a home that's practically falling apart, every setting has its own personality while still feeling like part of the same world. This is also the first Evil Dead movie to take place during the winter, and I thought that was a fantastic creative choice. Watching the snow drift through the night under nearby lights gives certain scenes this strangely beautiful but haunting look, especially one scene in particular involving a window looking outside. Even the muted color palette works in the movie's favor. Now let's just say the camera work deserves a lot of credit here. There are some beautiful overhead shots that sell the scale way better than traditional wide shots, and you have some of these long action sequences that feel like something straight out of a martial arts movie with how beautifully the camera follows and tracks everything as chaos is just going on in the back. And the practical effects are another win for this movie. I mean, between the makeup, prosthetics, and buckets of blood, this has all the violence that you've come to know and love at this point in the Evil Dead franchise. And even though there are still some parts where the CG might look a little off, those parts are few and far between, thankfully. And can we talk about the editing for a second? There are genuinely clever transitions in this movie, and early on there is a scene where a hip-hop track is slowly building up in volume, and then it just smash cuts to another scene, and wow. I won't spoil the moment because it's one of those little filmmaking choices that is just beautiful, but chef's kiss to the transition on that one. So hey, even though I wasn't really enjoying all the screenplay decisions in the later half of the movie, I never stopped appreciating the craftsmanship behind the camera, and I just wish the writing had been operating on the same level as everyone else that was involved in that. When I look at Evil Dead Burn as part of the franchise, I think this is going to end up being the black sheep of the family. Not because it's trying to do the exact same thing as the other movies, it actually introduces some interesting new ideas, but because it never fully commits to them. It almost feels like it tried too hard in some places and not hard enough in others. And to add some context, like for me, Evil Dead Rise is still the stronger modern entry because it gave me not just characters, but a whole family I actually cared about before everything went to hell. The tragedy is what made the violence hit so much harder. Here, Alice is really the only character I found myself rooting for, which made it difficult to feel the same emotional impact once the evil finally took over. Compared to the original trilogy, even when those movies were brutal, they still had a demented sense of humor. Burn leans much closer to the 2013 remake by taking itself seriously, and that's completely fine. But I don't think it commits to that approach nearly as well. Evil Dead Burn even features a grandma who has most of the funniest moments of the movie, although they did actually manage to run a joke into the ground to the point my theater just had this uncomfortable silence when she made the joke for like the third or fourth time. That being said though, there are still moments that reminded me exactly why I love this franchise. The signature Evil Dead camera racing through the woods is back, the Deadites are still cruel and sadistic, and there are a couple of clever ideas that I'd actually love to see explored in the future movies. Ironically, one of those ideas is that the evil is actually proactive this time, instead of simply waiting to be summoned. That's a clever twist to me, and I just wish the rest of the movie had been as confident in its new ideas. As for where I would rank it, it's somewhere near the bottom of the franchise for me because I just don't see myself revisiting it anytime soon. More than anything, Evil Dead Burn feels like a side quest in the rest of the Evil Dead universe. It expands the world a little bit, but it never pushes the series forward in a meaningful way, making it the modern Evil Dead movie I'm least interested in revisiting, at least so far. So at the end of the day, I still believe that Evil Dead Burn is a worthwhile entry into the franchise, even if it never reached the highs that I personally hoped it would. And my biggest disappointment isn't even with the violence or the gore, far from it. I am just disappointed that I saw something with such a great setup and premise that lost confidence in its own ideas and gradually turned into something that lost my interest the longer it went on. And even given the darker and meaner and less humorous tone of this movie, it didn't bother me nearly as much as the screenplay losing momentum. And hey, even when the CGI was so bad that it kind of took me out of the experience altogether, the direction, the editing, the cinematography, there is so much immense talent behind this production that, man, these people really do deserve their flowers for what they achieved here. And if you were to ask me which of the 3 modern Evil Dead movies I'd probably revisit before Evil Dead Wrath eventually comes out, I would probably say the 2013 reboot before I come back to Burn, because there are just some things that stuck in there with me that this movie just could not. And yet still, after everything I just criticized, this movie has one very funny post-credit scene and a second stinger after all the credits that has me so incredibly hyped to see where they take this from here. I mean, damn. But either way, stick around for after the credits, you're in for a treat. And so with that, I gotta give Evil Dead Burn a score of mild sauce. But with a little extra spice, because there was still plenty nice. I have a feeling opinions on this movie are going to be pretty divided. I already know people who absolutely loved it, and honestly, I can completely understand why. This was just my experience with it, and I'm at least happy I caught the matinee viewing. If you're looking for more Evil Dead violence and gore, you've definitely come to the right place. Just know there are also a few things here that aren't going to work for everybody. So does Burn rise to the occasion? For me, it doesn't completely burn out, but it for sure didn't rise to the heights I was hoping for. And that's my review for Evil Dead Burn. Did you have different thoughts? Did you enjoy the movie more or downright hate it? Either way, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I don't know what the next review will be for, but we'll for sure be getting one out for Spider-Man when that arrives. We'll see what's available between now and then, but in the meantime, thanks for kicking it with the channel, and I'll catch y'all for the next one. Yo yo!